During the first couple of months of Super Mario Wonder being available to the public, many people were quick to rush and see how quickly they could beat the new game, no matter what it took. While the first week was pretty tame in the grand scheme of things, developments immediately exploded, leading to a wide new array of tech thanks to discovered out-of-bounds glitches. This is cool and all, but there's still so much more besides simply speedrunning the fastest completion of the game. While there have been people majorly focused on the game's fastest completion, or any percent, there's also been a subset of people more interested in doing the complete opposite, 100%ing the game as quickly as possible. When the Mario Wonder leaderboards were finally established on speedrun.com, I pointed out in a previous upload that the record sat just over 6 hours. While this is already very impressive, this record has been completely demolished. Today, I want to talk about the recent history of Mario Wonder speedrunning that has been neglected more than it should be. I've done my fair share of breaking down the ongoing progression of any percent, but today, let's focus on how speedrunners started destroying the 100% speedrun category. Now, I could simply sit down and try to dissect every single 100% record since day one of the game's release, but that's not the most realistic to handle. A handful of the first record holders went into runs without fully knowing what to expect, and even when the time started to be chipped down, everyone was still trying to figure out what the best routes and greatest priorities during the run were. In my previous upload covering this game, I did briefly mention Sailo holding the record of 100%, having a 5 hour and 21 minute time. So to make this easy, I'm just going to use this as a beginning point and start with talking about the record that beat this time, which fortunately is very easy to locate since Sailo was able to lower this time roughly a week later. With 100% being a complete contrast to any percent, there's a lot to dive into, but the first thing I should probably address is, what is required for a 100% completion? Well, 100% requires collecting all 6 medals which show on your save file. You can get all 6 of these medals from doing 1. Completing the main story, aka beating Bowser, 2. Touching the top of the flagpole in every single level, 3. Obtaining every Wonder Seed, 4. Collecting every purple 10 coin, 5. Acquiring every badge, and lastly, 6. Buying every single standee. Obviously, doing all 6 of these things will take you quite a long time no matter what, but some of these things are more annoying than others. In the case of speedrunning, runners have pointed to one specific part that is the most annoying by far, getting every single standee. To explain this, let me back up slightly. Spread throughout the game are multiple shops where players can purchase a wide variety of things, but most notably, Wonder Seeds, badges, and standees. These can all be purchased from the purple coins you can collect throughout the game. While this is something touched on in any percent thanks to buying specific shop seeds throughout the run, 100% requires purchasing everything I previously mentioned. This leads to the route having to be very carefully planned and spread out, in order for the player to have the right amount of coins to spend for each shop housed in different worlds. The most annoying purchase of the bunch is standees, an item that once purchased can be placed by a player mid-level and functions as a respawn point if needed. There are 144 of these total, with a dozen being available of every character you can think of. Plopland shops throughout the main game have standees priced at 10 coins apiece, but that's not the issue. The problem is the fact that when purchasing from these shops, the standee you get is completely random, with duplicates being possible. In the case of speedruns, this is a huge frustration since these count towards 100% completion. Thanks to this, standees introduce a major element of randomness, or as players like to dub it, RNG. There is some good news though. This game is a special world which also features a shop. The specific one has standees available for a higher price of 30 coins, with the pro being 0% chances of pulling a duplicate. This has led to runners purchasing standees at shops throughout all the main worlds, and praying that they can get decent enough RNG. Once finishing up everything else in the game, they use specific areas to grind as many coins as they need, and then use a special world shop to purchase any standees they were not able to get during the run. Bouncing back to talking about the record I wanted to start with, Sailo on December 5th, 2023, only a week after his 521 record, was able to beat that with a 519. Sailo commented that he had really great RNG, which is quite obvious when seeing how he didn't really have to properly grind towards the end, only doing the coin goal or bonus sections. His biggest time loss by far was in the badge marathon split at the end, which features a really long challenge level testing the player's skills using the badge abilities found throughout the game. Sailo claims he lost upwards of 8 minutes just in the split alone, proving there was a ton of improvement to be chomped at still. If you are even remotely familiar with Mario Wonder speedrunning, or have already watched my previous uploads, your brain probably already leads to one person when I mention that there is one other key player in lowering 100%. If you've already guessed, it's probably correct, because it's Jhay. Jhay at this point had already repeatedly been the main reason to keep lowering the any percent record, with his only main competition a month after the game's release being Tsubasa. Well, yes, there is an any percent record here that has happened since my last upload. I'm gonna save this for a future any percent video, so let's just focus on 100%. Jhay had already stepped away from any percent to start learning and grinding at 100% instead, which is a partial reason he has slipped behind in any percent. With him already being very familiar with the game, switching to 100% was a pretty smooth transition, with him rapidly lowering his time time day after day as he became familiar with the run. By the time Sailo got his 5:19 record, Jhay had already gotten down to a 5:30, and while that may seem quite far off, for as long as 100% is, and a game as new as Wonder, he was very much already in contention of getting the record sooner than later. His best segments easily already put him in that discussion. A nice additional element present throughout Jay's run is the fact that on screen, he keeps note of how many standees he has in comparison to what his personal best does at the same point. He had a really great RNG this run, but still had to do more than Sailo. To have enough purple coins for the amount of standees he had left, he did a run through the level, the Sugar Star Trial, across the night sky. It was more than enough to lower the record by a minute and a half, sporting a 5:17.33. One last thing I'll mention is the fact that Jhay switched to Nabbit for the final challenging Badge Marathon level, and this makes the level way easier due to the fact that Nabbit doesn't take damage. Going forward, this would become a standard part of the route. At this point, Sailo and Jhay established themselves as the two rivals of 100%, with both of them still continuously eager to lower the time as much as possible. Both players were still messing with the category daily, and on the 7th, the two of them did a one-on-one race, meaning they had to do a run from start to finish without resetting. Jhay performed really well, getting a 5:20, not far off the record he just got, considering the length of the run. Sailo, on the other hand, was an even greater story, with Sailo having a run with a clean enough execution and RNG to not only win the race, but just barely beat Jhay with a 5:17.27, lowering the record by only 6 seconds. In a category this unoptimized still, that's crazy. With multiple record runs now being able to finish with great RNG, I should probably briefly go into how that has become possible. The route for this run has been majorly dissected, with the biggest priority being to grab as many purple coins as possible in order to avoid coin grinding at the end, assuming you don't have horrible RNG. For a decent bit at this point, runners had already been using a spreadsheet with detailed notes level by level. It even comes bundled with a calculator that can tell you how much you need to grind for coins based on how many standees and coins you have. Obviously, with such a long run though, even if you have decent standee RNG, it doesn't mean the run is perfect. There are so many levels to potentially lose or gain time on. If I broke into individual runs level by level, I'd be here all day, so I won't be doing that, but fortunately there are still multiple records to quickly discuss. With Jhay previously grinding any percent daily, he was trying to do the same thing with 100%. This meant that even if Sailo could keep up, he couldn't continuously keep himself on top. Jhay was already immediately doing another run the next day on the 8th, and Out of World 4 was already 5 minutes ahead of his previous record. While this lead would fluctuate throughout the run, and suffered from grinding for coins multiple times, he was still able to lower the record by just as much, casually getting a nearly 5-minute record improvement of 5:12.31. When posting, he claimed to have lost upwards of 3 minutes to grinding, meaning a time under 5:10 was more than possible. His sum of best was also starting to look just as interesting, being a step away from being just under 5 hours. Sailo was still able to keep himself in the game, and on the 9th wasn't able to get the record, but got himself a respectable personal best of 5:15.11. These splits being posted came with Sailo announcing he lost 3.5 minutes in the final split, and another 3.5 minutes overall to standee RNG, claiming a time under 5:10 was easily possible. If you weren't sure about such being a reality so soon, Jhay was able to swing that opinion around, because on the 10th, he was continuing his daily grind to maintain his dominance. He was able to have luck on his side as he continuously throughout the run stayed ahead of the standee RNG. By the time he exited Special World, he was on a pace decent enough to get below the 5:10 range. His final split also had plenty more time save hidden there, with him not just suddenly pulling out a 5:09, but a 5:08 instead. Now, if you've been around since the beginning of my Wonder coverage, you may remember that when major breakthroughs in any percent happened, there was one record that was set while a soon-to-be record was simultaneously going on, with that record also being replaced by another run started during that one. Unfortunately, I don't have something that can rival that, but I do have a similar situation. When Jhay finished his new 5:08 record, his rival, Sailo, was 4.5 hours into his own run. While he did unfortunately lose 2 minutes to standee RNG, looking at his pace out of Special World, he was absolutely on an amazing run. Being so far ahead already, his standee RNG didn't matter, and was still enough to get a 5:07.50, beating Jhay by not just over a minute, but over 34 minutes after he set it. This makes Jay's 5:08 time the shortest lived record in Wonder so far, with the shortest out of these any percent runs I mentioned lasting 47 minutes from the runner's source. While it may not be as surprising to see two overlapping records considering the two top players were daily grinding this 5-hour run, it's still an impressive feat considering both of their runs were clean enough to cause these two back-to-back improvements. Sailo's 507 is the current record as of scripting, but with how rapidly evolving this category has been, I would not be shocked to see this very quickly obsoleted. In regards to how low this time can possibly go, both Jhay and Sailo have a 4 hour and 57 minute sum of best, but obviously playing that well is a lot to ask between how much RNG and how many levels are in play. It's safe to say that no matter what, this time will be lowered by many more minutes, with the possibility of better routing and individual level strategies also being a factor. While we wait to see what happens, that's a brief peek into 100% speedrunning in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. Time will tell to see who can stay on top here, and if anything major will develop going forward. It'll also be interesting to see how well this category holds up over time versus any percent, with it at this specific moment being very popular. I suspect the hype will eventually die down though, and until then, thanks for watching.